Hello pandas and other scrap enthusiasts. We have another scrap project, and today, well, okay, I have purchased and saved up a whole bunch of different pieces of lead because this is pouring ingots on easy mode, but this time I think it's actually going to be profitable.
Now the tools we need are pretty simple. We've got this pot and this scoop and this ladle, which are all stainless steel. It's good to have that. And a little chunk of a candle. That one's important. And of course gloves, and I just picked up this brownie pan, which I think should make a decent ingot mold. And a non-negotiable, the respirator. Now, this is all the stuff that I've collected for free. I've just picked this up on my adventures hunting for scrap metal. Most of this here is plumbing lead, but there's a few other bits and pieces that make it, fun and interesting. And then these sheets I purchased specifically for this purpose from the scrapyard. We can talk more about that later. And other than that, all we really need is a simple propane burner of some kind and a can of propane. And it's as simple as that. We get the pot hot and we put some lead into it. I'm starting with the dirtiest stuff because I've got a big bucket and I don't know, just getting through it. I will never get bored of watching this stuff melt.
Yep. Oh, that's some liquid.
Now, of course, all that grunge and junk on the top, this is the real reason we're refining it down. I want to sell this as ingots. And the reason why people want to buy it as ingots is because it's clean. So, after we get a decent pile going, we're going to want to skim all of that junk off. And then we just keep feeding more into it. Now, these pieces I was actually really excited about, and I was looking forward to this project for this very reason. See, these pipes actually have big chunks of brass on them that are simply lead soldered to different old style pipes. So if we dip them into the molten lead, we can get the lead to melt off pretty easily. Now this, on the other hand, this is from a toilet. You can tell because it's got a wax seal, and that wax is not really a problem. In fact, it's kind of a feature. It'll melt off, and then if we light it on fire, it'll act as a bit of a flux. I'll be happy to explain that more later, but for now, we've got these nice, clean looking, well, okay, they don't look clean, but they're chunks of clean brass and a pot full of lead. Which again, we're going to be doing a lot of skimming. Like a lot of skimming. Now this one I wanted to share because I didn't speed this clip up. This is just in real time. And yes, I did jump back. It just burst into flames, and this is a pot of molten metal, so I'm not apologizing for that. It is fun to watch it melt down so quickly though, which only happens when you've got a decent amount in there. The thermal mass is high enough that the piece you're introducing isn't reducing the temperature too much. We don't need to get nerdy about it to enjoy it, though. I just love melted metal. And after a little bit of fiddling, there's our last piece of nice, clean brass. Clean being a relative term here. Look at that. And after a good stir and a skim, we can start pouring our first batch of ingots. Real fun to do. Look at those beauties. Now they are a little smaller than the ones I'll make later. Remember, this is a bit of an experiment. And I'm not sure, but it looks like it got the material a little too hot. I'm guessing that's why it's got those large bubbles and that discoloration. It's hard to say for sure, but the night was getting kind of cold, so I figured I'd wrap it up. And this is our first batch. I gotta say, there's just something I love about that color. That blurple, blue, purple color shift kind of a situation. But I don't think it's a good thing. I think it indicates that I overheated the material, or possibly the tin. There's probably a bit of tin in there. Anyhow, you can see that that color shift happen in real time here. I sped up that clip and it looked like almost like stained glass. And here, going from the gold to that bright blue and then that rich purple. I just had to share it. I think it's gorgeous. I wish I could preserve it, but I can't really do it on purpose. Now, it looks nice and clean, right? Well, that's the thing. It's really important to scrape the bottom and the sides of the pot, because even though the lead is so heavy, everything will float on top of it. Lead also has a really high surface tension, which means it can very easily trap things underneath or alongside it, and it won't allow them to just sort of float through, even though they want to. So this is one of the reasons why it's so important to flux it. And I kind of think that oxide layer that the overheating caused is helping me here, because it's giving a little more body to scoop up all of these little bits and pieces. And this is only half a pot, so we'll fill that back up and keep this party going. More stirring, more skimming, and we end up here. So here's the fluxing. See, and the candle wax is perfect because we can then light the smoke that's coming off of it, and that's what we really want. It's not the wax, but it's the carbon that we're introducing by adding the soot from burning the candle wax. We stir that through, and it gives all of the impurities something to bind to, which makes it a lot easier to release them and capture them up at the top. Ideally, we would do this several times, just to make sure we've got a very, very clean product. And of course, you don't have to use wax. You could use newspaper or napkins or dried leaves or whatever you have on hand. But I like how small the particles from the soot are, and I'm not introducing too much more stuff to skim off. And with some time and some care, we should be able to get almost all of those little bits of dirt and soot and junk up to the top and scoop them off. And once we've done that, we can get started, get in there with our ladle, and just keep going. There's going to be quite a few of these, but it's a good thing it's so much fun to pour them. And look at that. We still got that blurple, that color shift blue. It's not a benefit in any way, but it sure is pretty. Now, I am actually keeping these in separate batches because I've got so many different materials, but this stuff here is just going to be kind of a mixed batch because I've got these old sinker weights, and I can't say with any precision what the alloy used on those was. So this is just going to be kind of the Snickle Fritz, the mixed bag. There's a battery terminal clamp and a whole bunch of wheel weights. Now there's that surface tension I was talking about. All these little steel clips, they just float right up to the top. Super easy to remove. And then I've got these other pieces that I acquired. I suppose now is a good enough time to point out I've probably got about $200 invested in total in this project, and that is mostly those sheets of lead that I bought, but there's also these mixed pieces that I got as part of a scrap lot that I purchased. And then these are just various bits from my adventures. You might recognize some of them from previous processing videos, and you might not. Either way, I think a lot of those were pure soft lead, but because I can't be sure, I don't want to go around trying to sell them as such. So this is going to be a half and half sort of a blend. Now these sheets, which I purchased specifically for this project, are the closest thing I've got to 100% pure soft lead, and I do think they are pure. Unfortunately, I didn't have the good sense to use the machete this time around. I filmed this a while back, so I've been learning, and the machete would definitely be the way to go. Either way, they melt down beautifully, and if I could, I would rather just have this stuff. See, the wheel weights are actually better in many applications because they're about 95% lead with a 5% antimony additive, which makes them harder and also makes them pour a lot nicer. So depending on what you're doing, they're actually preferable. But as I learned later, the majority of people seem to want a sense of control over exactly what alloy it is, or perhaps the demand for pure lead is just higher than the demand for pre-hardened lead. Either way, it's something to keep in mind for anybody who's got more than a passing interest in what I'm doing here. At this point, I think I've got the temperature pretty much dialed in. The ambient temperature outside is cooperating, and I've got the flames at about the right level. I'm really happy with the way things are looking now. And that high purity lead does create a beautiful looking product.
And it's safe to say the mold's got a little hot. Not a real fire risk, I don't think. Anyway, after a little time, these little lumps are sufficiently cool, and we can see what the total weight actually is. So it's just over 270 pounds we just melted, which is not too bad, but we need to take inventory because there's some lead that I have from before. They're actually pretty big lumps, to be totally honest. But if we add these together, we have slightly more than 400 pounds of lead. So we'll see what we can get. I was told $2 a pound was an easy price, but I've seen them going for as high as $5 a pound, or at least starting there. So what would that... That'd be like $2,000 sitting on the table here, which isn't bad, but ideally we would sell them all to fewer buyers, which means we'd have to incentivize larger purchases by giving better deals. So we'll just see what we can get. Now this is where things get a little bit tricky and a little more challenging, simply because any other scrap metal we just bring to a scrapyard during business hours and they'll buy it at current market prices. No problem at all. This, on the other hand, the whole point is we're trying to maximize profits, which means selling them to private buyers. So that is going to take a little more time. The best we can do is take good pictures, post them in the usual places, and hopefully we get found by our buyers sooner rather than later.
Now, sales moved along reasonably consistently. The first one I had was for 4 blocks, 10 pounds. The person didn't plan on melting them, I don't think. They wanted to use them for weighing down leather or some kind of a project like that. Either way, 10 pounds, and I gave them a bit of a deal at $3.50 a pound, so $35. Now the next sale was 1 block, and the individual thought each block was 1 pound. They sort of misunderstood what was happening there, but that's okay. And then the next sale, $48 and change to an individual who wanted only the highest purity because he uses it for refining gold, specifically gold fillings from dentist offices. I would love to acquire some of those myself, but I haven't explored that yet. Next up, we had an individual who was casting some fishing sinkers, and they wanted 25 pounds. Apparently, the high purity stuff is necessary for him because it will stick to the steel wire that he uses to make them better than an alloy would. I don't know anything about that, but that's what he said. Now, sales slowed down a lot right after that. I got a lot of messages from people who only wanted the highest purity, and I was starting to get resistant to selling that because my expectation was people would want the alloy, or at the very least, I wanted to try and sell the wheel weight alloy before I ran out of the stuff that was high in demand. So I started saying no to people who just wanted to buy 50 or 100 pounds of the pure stuff, and was waiting for my whale, as some people say, an individual who wanted to buy a large amount, and eventually I did find that individual. Now, it was a little frustrating because at first he said he wanted everything, which was great, and he took a really long time to show up, in which time he explained he actually only wanted the pure lead, which was frustrating, but when he finally arrived and I showed him the product, he did decide to buy everything except the wheel weight lead. And because it was a large order, we came up with a fair deal for both of us, slightly over $700 in one go. And that was the win I was waiting for. Following that, though, things really slowed down, because all I had left was the wheel weight lead, which did not have the demand that I was expecting it to. All told, I was sitting on roughly 93 pounds of wheel weight lead, minus a cardboard box. And eventually I did have one buyer come by for £7 for a art project. I didn't really press for more information. £7, $20. And after that, there was almost nothing for a month. But I was patient, and eventually somebody did come by to purchase the rest of the wheel weight lead, which was £86, and I gave him a good deal because I was frankly tired of looking at it. That was $220.
So after all that, how did we do? What are the numbers? How much did I actually make? Well, add it all up, $1,138 Canadian is what I sold everything for. So divide that, and my average was $2.79 Canadian, and it took me 3 months to sell it all. Now, that is less than I should have taken for it, but there are reasons for that, and I will explain. Now, if you want to do the same thing, it's possible, but you may get stuck on trying to find lead cheap enough that it's worth doing it. I was only able to buy a small portion of what I used from the scrapyard because I have a relationship with them. I've known them for years, and they're very willing to help me do these projects just because I enjoy them, and I think they enjoy watching them. Shout out. A lot of the time, if you do find a scrapyard who's willing to sell it to you, they're not going to give it away for the same price they paid for it. They're in business to make money, so they're going to need to make a profit, and the price they offer may not be feasible to do this. More than anything, this was an experiment that I wanted to do to confirm and share that yes, you can sell lead ingots locally for much, much more than scrap price. Now, it works because most people looking to buy hobby lead will end up on rotometals.com, where the price is also $3 US a pound, but they'll spend twice that much on shipping because the weight is so high. So being able to find a comparable product locally saves them a lot of money. It worked great for me because most of what I had here I got for free. Although I just remembered I did spend about $80 on that wheel weight lead that I had sitting in the smaller box a while back for a different video, so my cost was closer to $300. That's still over $800 in profit, so it should be no surprise I spent a little of that on a really nice ingot mold. Now, the next upgrade will be some kind of a hardness tester so I can more accurately assess the purity of the material. So there you go, another side hustle for some gas money. 3 things I learned though. Number 1, wheel weight lead. Demand is much lower for wheel weight lead than it is for pure soft lead. Number 2, your potential buyers are also limited, so turnover can be slow. And 3, what's 3 again? Being in a hurry is expensive. I put extra pressure on myself to sell all of it because I wanted to make this video, and as a result, I gave better deals than I necessarily needed to, which cut into my profits. Next time around, I'll have more confidence in my product, and I won't pressure myself into giving bargain basement prices. Hope you enjoyed this scrap metal adventure. Click the like and copy link to support the channel, and subscribe to be sure. I'll see you on the next one. Now leave it better than you found it. Keep doing the thing.